Some of the questions I've been seeing about the new Dragon Ball Fusions banner is, should I pull on the Dragon Ball Fusions banner? Which of the cards are actually good, and which of the cards are actually bad? One of the things to keep in mind about the Dragon Ball Fusions banner, spoiler alert, most of these cards are obsolete. But there is something notable about them. They do fill niches. They definitely have a place where they belong in particular teams, and we're going to do our best to point that out. One thing to note is that this is indeed a GSSR banner, so you get 3 GSSR pulls, that's 150 stones if you do all 3 of them. But one of the issues with it is that besides the fusion cards, there's literally no other characters on this banner. Karoli, Barlot, Pandel, Volpan, Kelisa, Janemba, and Chowman. And then it's nothing but SRs and Rs for days. Probably one of the biggest issues with this banner is the lack of variety. And then worse than that is that they up the gamble by making it so that these cards will never come back. You will probably never see the Dragon Ball Fusions crossover summon again on Global or on GP, which is a bit upsetting, but not surprising. It doesn't really make sense to me that they didn't put these cards onto future banners. Why have these cards in the game if nobody is able to pull them anymore? So that's one of the things that you need to keep in mind. If you're a collector, this is probably something that you'll want to throw 50 stones at the very least, and get one of these cards, 1 or 2 of these cards. The draw rate is 10% on the DBZ Dokkan, Dokkan stats, sorry. The draw rate is 10%, so the odds of you actually getting 2 SSRs in a multi-pull is actually not bad. Definitely, 10% is definitely par for the course in terms of draw rates for banners, at least recently, anyway. So as you can see, I already did one of the summons, and I don't plan on doing any more because I got pretty much almost half of the cards on this banner. So there's literally no point in me pulling any more on this banner. But yeah, let's continue. Let's actually go into the cards themselves here. So first off, we have Karoli. One of the central themes you'll notice about these cards is that their leader skills are not that great. If they were HP, attack, and defense plus 60%, that would make them like basically demigods, and that would actually definitely give you a reason to want to pull on these banners, because by themselves these cards are but with that HP, attack, and defense plus 60%, then you're looking at demigod status, and then it's like, okay, well then that bolsters the reasons for you to want to pull on that banner now, because then they would have had something to definitely consider. For people lacking monocolor leadership, such as God Tanks, Super Vegito, etc., etc. Okay, so for the most part, we're just gonna be looking at actually like the passive skills and then the super attacks. So first off, we have attack plus 70% when HP is 30% or above. In most cases, you're not gonna be at 30% or below. So this passive is actually not that bad. And then I forget how many specifically medals you have to get from the Brawly event, but this card does Dokkan, and when he Dokkans, he loses the HP requisite. That's gone, no longer there, so it activates every single time, no matter what your HP is at, and he gets attack plus 80%, so it goes up 10%. Nothing to sneeze at on a mono tech team with God Tank's lead and God Tank's friend. Karoli actually does solid damage. So definitely nothing to sneeze at. I mean, we're probably not going to be stopping the presses as far as damage is concerned, but he definitely will be pulling his weight. Because, of course, the stats do go up, and then you can always unlock potential later on once you start having extra orbs to throw around. thanks to the dupe system, now that we have that, speaking of which. So then the super attack, most of the cards on this banner have supreme damage. So they're going to be doing pretty par for the course as far as damage goes. Rare chance to stun the enemy, you're probably looking at like anywhere between 10 and 20% chance to stun, which is not that big a deal, but you know, a rare chance to stun is better than no chance to stun, and that's just my opinion. So moving on to the next card. So yeah, the consensus is that this is a pretty solid card. And it fits really well into Fuse Fighter teams and Monotech teams. If you have either of those and you need a strong card that plays really, really well with characters like God Tanks and Super Vegito, then this is definitely a card to have. Moving on to Barlot. Passive skill, attack plus 12% for every key sphere obtained. We're looking at pretty par for the course nuker, strength nuker. If you have Omega Shenron, this is definitely a card that would be really useful to you. Because again, the theme for a lot of these cards is that, hey, monotype teams, they work really good on those. So again, strength for Barlot here, and a Omega Shenron team with lead and friend. He's going to be doing some solid damage, especially if you take the time to actually set him up. And then, of course, Spirit Cannon does supreme damage to the enemy. Yeah, I mean, there's really not much to say here. He's one of the most straightforward cards on the banner. So moving on, we have Pandel. I'm not a huge fan of Pandel. But there is one thing worth noting for her. She gets attack plus 25% for all allies with no requisite. So whenever she's on the field, she's giving your allies 25%. She Dokkan awakens and gets plus 30%. Not a huge deal, not a huge difference, but she hits a little bit harder. She gets a little more HP and defense, and then of course the plus 5 attack for all allies. And you'll notice that she has intelligence for her typing. And one of the problems with a lot of just intelligence units in general, is that they have a little bit of trouble doing really solid damage, like really, really good damage. It's the only card that really comes to mind as far as like insane damage goes is Buhan. So having a plus 30% for all allies as an intelligence card makes her a really good support card for intelligence teams. You will probably have, if you're even a mid-game player, you probably have at least 4 or 5 Fuse Fighter teams, 4 or 5 Fuse Fighter characters that are better than this. So you probably won't even need this card in a Fuse Fighter deck. But in Mono End, she really shines. So that's something to consider. Moving on to Bullpen. One of the things I noticed, well, not really, I didn't really notice it at first, but somebody in one of my streams mentioned it to me. She has the title Warrior Girl with Strong DNA. It's such a strange title. It's kind of like that sink in. Like it seems kind of strange. But anyway, so agility type card. Some of the better cards in the game are agility cards. Leader skill, nothing to really call them about. The passive skill, again, is what we're looking at. Plus 3 key for all allies when HP is 50% or above. Really good support card. If you have, I mean, even just for Fuse Fighter teams or Mono Agility teams, this card is going to shine because she's going to be helping you launch a lot of super attacks. If you're looking at like a Super Vegito friend and lead monotype team, you're looking at anytime she's out, you're gonna have all of your cards are going to have 9 key. So finding 3 key orbs is not difficult, not difficult at all in this particular case. So she's a really strong support card. From what I remember, her links are not very good, but I mean she has Fuse Fighter, so that's something, I guess. Spring damage for her attack. She does Dokkan Awaken, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think the HP requisite goes down to 30% or 20%. I probably should have double checked before I started streaming, but you know, say let me. So moving on, yeah, Bullpen, great card. I personally think the Bullpen is one of the best cards on this banner in terms of support. Is where support goes. So now we have Kelisa, Cooler Frieza, obviously, and leader skill, obviously burn running that. Attack plus 70% when performing a super attack, not bad. There's obviously a lot of cards that have better nuking passives, but as far as attack plus 70% goes, that's really not too bad. If you, I mean, the only time that this card is really going to shine is when you back it up, is when you like build a team around it. So we're looking at mostly like Frieza cards, mono strength teams. Omega Shenron friend and lead with this card and the LR Frieza. This card does really good damage, and it's really it's definitely a gift to have if you're in that particular position. So if you have Omega Shenron and you're thinking about pulling on this banner and you're hoping to get this card and you don't pull this card, you're gonna be in good shape. I pulled this card actually in my multi, and I don't have Omega Shenron, so hopefully we get him in the God banner, which is coming up in like 4 days or so. At least at the time of recording, anyway. So yeah, I mean, the verdict obviously is, you know, actually this card is one of the more niche cards in the whole banner. Very specific types of cards are needed to actually make this one shine. So moving on, finally, we have Janemba, which is a tech card. Attacked enemies attack negative 30%. He'll fit okay into like a God Tank's team because obviously God Tank's, you know, he has fused fighters, so he'll benefit a little bit if you match him up. Lightning Shower Rain causes supreme damage to enemy and lowers defense. I'm not quite sure what the percentage of defense is, but considering that it doesn't have anything like catastrophically lowers defense on it or whatever, or like, you know, any of the other modifiers, it's probably not very high. But one of the, I mean, like, I feel like when I'm looking at this card, I feel like it's made for the Brawly event. Because Brawly does a ton of damage, having that extra attack down, having that extra attack debuff is really nice. And then it lowers defense. I don't think it lowers defense enough to make a difference, like to actually make you do real damage, but who knows. We'd have to actually look at the modifier and then compare it to actual like Brawly Buster cards. As far as defense lowering on the supers go. So kind of underwhelming. If I'm not mistaken, he has common links for Majin team, so he'll fit in really well with the Majin team as well. Continuing on to the last card, which is Chow Man. Okay stats, high HP for, you know, what it is, for a physical card. And then as far as the passive skill goes, it's Ki plus 8 and attack plus 3000 when HP is 50% or below, which is really underwhelming. If you're running a mono physical team, which is where you're probably going to want to slot him anyway, your Ki is going to be at 6 for every card, pretty much, at all times. Especially if you're running, you know, Brawly Friend and Brawly Lead. So the key, and so the extra Ki there doesn't really help any, but it's there if you need it. Yeah, well, I mean, hopefully you won't, but and then it has like a flat attack bonus, which I noticed that a lot of like the more hardcore players are not really that keen on flat attack boosts, and I have to admit that I think the card would definitely have been a lot better if it had been like attack plus 30% or something. Or probably even higher. I don't think at 30% would even be over. Yeah, I don't think it wouldn't even be over attack plus 2000. Probably like more like 50-60%. But if it had that, it would have been a more attractive card to want to try to pull. But again, they don't want to make these cards too powerful. Ultimate Explosion is a super. It's an AoE move. So it makes Chow Man pretty unique, at least. It causes mass damage to all enemies while sacrificing 20% HP. From what I understand, mass damage is technically with a extreme modifier. So another thing they could have done to make this card more desirable is to increase it to supreme damage. So cause supreme damage to all enemies while sacrificing 20% HP. That would have made this an extraordinarily noteworthy card. But since it has the extreme modifier on it, that's not that big a deal. Another thing that turns a lot of people off is that you're sacrificing 20% HP. From what I understand, it's current HP and not actually max HP. So as your HP gets lower, you're sacrificing less HP to do Ultimate Explosion as a super. And then using this card, from what I can tell, the biggest use for it is for events that have a lot of units that you're gonna have to fight. The cooler event, the metal cooler event, I should say. Some of the story mode missions, etc., etc. These will allow you to do a lot of damage in a short time frame with like a mono physical team, and you'll get through those missions a little bit quicker. If you're one of those people, those really lucky people that have AoE characters, and a lot of them. I know there's some of you out there that have like Maj Vegeta and the Zeno Trunks. Some of you even have like Brawly too, the Strength Brawly. Putting these cards on AoE team, putting this card on an AoE team would definitely help round things out a little bit, because you know you can never have too much AoE. World Tournament applications is not as useful as it could have been, because this card is coming out so late in the current meta. It's gonna be obsoleted. I mean, it's obsolete now, but it's gonna be even more obsolete as bigger and better cards come out. And I'm sure at some point they're gonna release an AoE card that's gonna kill all the other cards, and it's gonna make this even more obsolete. So Chow Man, he's the mixed bag. If you don't have AoE, he can be useful. If you do have AoE, he's not that great. So what's the final verdict on the Dragon Ball Fusions banner? What's the TLDR of this whole video? Specifically, it's pull at your own risk. You do get one SSR card for every multi that you do, but the cards that you have the opportunity to pull are just not that great. They range from okay to completely obsolete, and a lot of them really only shine on mono teams regarding their specific typing. So again, pull at your own risk. I've already done a pull. I've already done a multi-pull. Like I said, I've gotten like half of the cards pretty much almost off of that one multi-pull, so I got lucky. I'd love to keep pulling until I had all the cards, because again, this banner will probably never, ever, ever, ever come back again. It's been several months since this banner came out on JP, and it has not come back. At least not to my knowledge. I'm pretty sure I would have noticed that. But the fact of the matter is that the odds of it coming back are extraordinarily low. And why would they bring it back? Because all the cards are obsolete. What they should have done is they should have put it on future banners. So they should have put the units on future banners, but for some reason they didn't. I guess they wanted to make these cards like more enticing to collectors. So yeah, anyway, that's pretty much it. Dragon Ball Fusions crossover summon at your own risk, man. That's the best way I can put it. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you guys in the next video.